Welcome to the But She's Your Mother podcast, where we talk about all things related to being raised by narcissistic parents. Our guests are adult survivors of child abuse. Please note that this podcast is intended for mature audiences and may feature topics such as emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, domestic violence, self-harm, suicide, murder, and eating disorders. Opinions expressed by guests and survivors are their own. Some names may be changed or blocked out to protect minors, victims, and survivors. Thank you for listening to But She's Your Mother, the podcast. Today's guest is Valerie Shalit. She is a sibling survivor of a narcissistic mother and family system. This is her story.
Good afternoon. My name is Valerie. I'm from New York, and believe it or not, at 53 years old, I had no idea what a narcissist was until I met Marnie on TikTok one night. Actually, I didn't meet her. I was destined to meet Marnie. I was flipping through TikTok and I was looking for answers on narcissist behavior and narcissist abuse, and I came upon Marnie's page, and I said, I'm making an appointment with this woman because all of your videos were exactly my childhood. Everything from not having clothes that fit properly, not having what to eat, being a middle schooler and not having a winter coat to wait at the bus stop, or whatever it was, whatever you were speaking about, being abused in private, but being lauded in public of what a wonderful girl I was, and being young, and I'm looking at my mother like, bitch, are you crazy? You just freaking beat me up in the backseat of the car, but now you got me. So I'm so grateful to be here today and be part of, but it's your mother, because I hear that all the time, still at 53 years old, but it's your mother. And I'm just so happy to be here to share my trials and tribulations of my traumahood.
Well, thank you so much for being here on But She's Your Mother. To me, it's very powerful to have named the podcast that because of how guilty or embarrassed. I felt more embarrassed when somebody would say that. And then I would go on the defense and say, yeah, but she's my mother and she shouldn't have been hurting me, and people not wanting to listen. It's one thing not to be able to wrap your head around something, but it's quite another not to even be willing to have an open mind to listen to the fact that I'm explaining, look, I was abused by my mother, but she's my mother. She should have been the person that was my safest person. And there are some people who just don't connect to that, don't want to hear it, are uncomfortable with other people's trauma because they haven't dealt with their own, or just literally can't relate to it. They can't fathom. Society has a problem with understanding that mothers are people and people abuse other people. People abuse children and mothers
Yes.
abuse their own children.
Yes.
And so we need to really start to be more sensitive and listen to survivors, which is part of the reason for this podcast, so that people at least respect where we are. Even if they don't agree with us, at least have some sensitivity and respect, right?
Absolutely. So
So
what I wanted to tell you was also that not only did I find your TikTok to be like a godsend to me, but you brought me strength. And I'm not afraid anymore to defend myself but it's your mother, the people that always say, but that's your mother. And it's kind of shocking that people have the nerve to even say that, but she's your mother. I would never say that to somebody in this day and age. If I saw somebody and they were confiding into me and it was their dad or their auntie or whatnot, I would say, oh, but that's your family member. What, I have such a perfect life? They have such a perfect life that they should say that to people like us? So that's something that's like a conundrum. We have to go over that. But
yeah,
yeah,
for
this is a
sure.
great name for the podcast. But anyway.
Thank you.
Let's
It
go
makes
on.
me happy from a very unhappy place,
And
right?
when I heard that you named it that, I was like, "Oh my God, that's like the perfect name for it," because I hear that all the time. I was in the shopping in the supermarket not too long ago, and an elderly lady came up to me who knew my mother from years ago, because my mom's a very successful business person in my community, and she used to work for her. Oh, how's your mother? And I just for some reason that day I decided not to lie, because a lot of people come up to me and they go, "How's your mother?" And I always go, "Oh, she's fabulous. She's on a cruise. She's here." On that day, I was like, you know what? I haven't spoken to her and I'm not really getting along with her. And the lady was like, but that's your mother. And I turned around, I went, and what about your sister? Are you still fighting with your sister? Like, get over it. you know what? And they worked in the office and I was there working for my mother as well, where most of the abuse happened because I was a single parent child relationship, and I worked for my mom, who was, like I said, very successful. And these people that worked for my mother saw the abuse every single day. So for them to say, "It's your mother," is shocking. But I guess, like you said, people just don't get it,
Yeah.
or they don't want to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, both, it's a mix. It
Yeah.
depends on the person,
I mean,
obviously.
I was abused uh, at home at a very young age, and I was also abused as an adult. I ended up working for my mother, who owned a tremendous company, big company, and she had no shame. There was, I guess it got to a point where she had no shame, where she would just abuse me right in public. And I don't know if I know that most narcissists have a very they're almost all alike in some ways. They have all of the same codes, they're all made from the same cloth. But some narcissists don't embarrass you in public, but mine did. Went to a point where she started doing it in public and really did shame me, and that's when it started to go no contact.
It's kind of a mixed bag because they're nurturing their likability. They're behaving a different way in public than they typically do behind closed doors. But they also, depending on who their audience is, that's a part of the smear campaign. When they're mistreating you in public, when they're embarrassing you, when they're making it seem like there's something wrong with you in public, that's part of them also laying the foundation.
Humiliation,
Yeah, and
humiliation.
giving other people permission to treat you poorly. So that is a component of how they abuse as well, that we actually don't talk about that much. So in terms of your childhood, like, give us kind of a bird's eye view into what it was like in your childhood with your mother.
I was an only child. I didn't have any brothers or sisters that I had known of. I grew up an only child with a mother and a father, my mother being the narcissist. My father, who I thought was my father, ended up not being my dad, and I didn't find that out until I was like 9 or 10 years old. And I actually kept it a secret to those around me, that I knew that this man wasn't my father, because it's almost like I was groomed by my narcissistic mother to keep secrets and to keep shame away. Even, I mean, there is no shame in saying that the man that was bringing me up was not my father. I don't know why she felt that she had to keep it a secret. Although I was thinking about it last night because I knew I was going to have a session with you today. She probably kept it a secret because she wanted to keep him away, because he would probably tell the whole world of what a piece of garbage that she was. She was really an evil person. And I know that they say narcissists are created or they're born. I don't know how they're created or made, or if they're cut from a cloth, but they're here to stay. More attention needs to be put on narcissistic people, because they are the most evil, empty, demonic souls, and they are just so cruel. And I feel bad for every little child out there that has to deal with a narcissistic sibling, parent, whatever it is. It is really awful. My mother was extremely abusive. I remember getting beatings at a very young age, getting punished just for nothing. I remember when I got to in my adolescence, when I had gotten my menstruation, and as a young lady, 12, 13, you start to get pretty and you start to bloom. That was when it really the shit hit the fan, because I started to bloom, and I was always a cute kid, but I became really pretty. And she was beautiful, my mother. She still is a pretty lady, although she ruined herself with plastic surgery. There was a jealousy component that had started, and I'll never forget, she wouldn't buy me any clothes. And I remember being in the 6th grade, and my chest started to bloom. And I remember a lovely teacher at school came up to me on the lunch line, and she said, "Val, listen, sweetheart, you have to wear a brassiere." And I remember being online holding my bologna sandwich, and I'm like, I have boobs. I didn't even have a mother to tell me, "You're going to get breasts, you're going to get your period, we're going to buy you some pads, we're going to take you to the pharmacy, we're going to get." She never did anything like that for me. I remember being in school, a teacher had tell me to please wear a brassiere, and when I went home to tell her I needed a brassiere, she beat the shit out of me.
I'm so sorry.
Horrible. I mean, really horrible. Getting my period was another disaster. I got smacked in the face. I mean, what is that? Is that like a cultural thing? I don't know. I mean, I'm Italian, but you get smacked in the face? Here I am, terrified that I'm bleeding in my panties, and I'm just a kid. And she didn't even, I remember rolling up toilet paper and putting it in there, and bleeding all over the mattress. And then perspiration started, and I never had like a roll on. Like back in the early 70s, it was like the lady stick or something. All my girlfriends had it. I had nothing. I had paper towels under my armpits and I was sweating and it was disgusting. My nails were long. Although she looked like Crystal Carrington from Dynasty. She was stunning. But I never knew to speak up for myself because being groomed all these years by a narcissist, you would think that this was normal.
Well, that's it exactly. That was your normal. A house of secrets, a house of lies, neglect.
Yes. Yes,
Uh,
a big time neglect.
I remember you talking about at one point when you were going to go out with your friends, your mother would pile on the chores and the
Oh,
cleaning.
yes. Yes, yes. I'll never forget. It was like a sunny Saturday or Sunday morning, and my girlfriends wanted to go to the beach. I remember it was like they were downstairs beeping the horn, and she's like, "Well, you can't go to the beach. You have to fix all the beds. You have to clean the bathrooms. You got to clean the kitchen." And I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me? You couldn't have told me this last night. I would have done half the chores the night before." I mean, I was like a Cinderella, and she refused to give me not even an inch. All right, do the chores when you come home, or okay, come home from the beach early. I literally was a modern day Cinderella. I had to tiptoe around her and do all of the chores before I was allowed out of the house. And then maybe I was allowed out. And then I don't know, I can't remember if she let me go or not, but she just ruined my day. The narcissist knows how to do one thing: ruin happy occasions. If it's your birthday, they'll make you cry. If it's a funeral, they'll make sure that they make a big stink at the funeral so that even the dead person doesn't get the attention they deserve. Seriously. So yeah, she would do things like that too. She would always throw a monkey wrench into my plans. She would humiliate me in front of my friends. She would make me look like the bad one. She would tell the entire family I'm a liar. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a trollop. She's a tramp. All of those things. If I went to make myself look pretty, who are you getting all duded up for? And I would be a young girl. I'll never forget the Farrah Fawcett hairdo was in style. I would be curling my hair. I was like maybe 14 years old. I don't even know what like a boy was. Like nobody really paid attention to me. She would say things so inappropriate to me at 14. Like, are you in a relationship? Are you having someone? Are you do? And I'm like, what the fuck is this lady saying? It's like they are so demented and sinister that they put that on a young child. It's really inappropriate.
The lying and the deception and the reinvention, you not knowing that the person who was your he wasn't your father, wasn't
No.
your father. And that's a habit that they have. Whenever they get married or they have somebody new, all of a sudden that's the father. The last name's changed. I mean, I had quite a few last names. Like it's a new instant family. It's a new invention that, they present to everyone like yesterday didn't exist and there was no other father, no other husband, no other person in there. So here's this child, learning this information. Like I can't imagine, because for me, I knew who my father was and wasn't, although they were all my fathers, right? Because that was the
Yeah,
rule,
I had a lot of those too.
you know.
And
But
it's funny because I knew he wasn't my father. First of all, I looked nothing like him. And the secret, it's unbelievable about these narcissists. They're able to control the entire family dynamic. My mother was able to control my grandmother, her sister, her two brothers, all the cousins, into fooling little me into thinking that this man, who was a nice man, by the way, he was really a great dad. He was very wealthy. He was fabulous, into fooling me that this was my dad. I mean, how do these narcissists have this kind of power over people? It's really mind-boggling. Until
I,
this day, she still has power over. She even has power over my in-laws, but that's another thing we'll go through. How do these narcissists retain the wherewithal and the power to connive and convince everybody that we are a certain way, or don't tell that secret, or whatever? Like they have like a minion of people. I don't even want to call them flying monkeys because they could be, but they have a minion of people who do protect them.
I think that the minion of people are protecting themselves. This is how a narcissistic family system functions. They function on a very surface level in terms of it mattering a lot how the outside views their family unit. And so they would rather hold a lie and destroy a child than tell the truth and just destroy the family. That has so some of it, yeah, can be fear from the main narcissist. Like I think that it would make sense for my situation. For example, my mother was the oldest, for her younger sisters to have fear from her because she was there first and she set the tone. So
Right.
some of it is fear-based and some of it is conditioning, and some of it is everybody out to make the family unit look good, and they don't care what it costs. They don't have that same conscience and that same wanting to protect a child the way other people do, because it's just a function of the system, the brainwashing. It's a cult. Look at
It
how
is.
cults operate.
That's a very good way to put
It's
it.
really a cult.
It's a goddamn cult. And narcissistic abuse survivors, I have to tell you, we are probably the strongest people out there. I put up with so much beatings and violence and unnecessary abuse, just from a soulless, demonic human being. And she's still trotting away, this one. She's still up there. She's moving and grooving. My mom, she's still working. And listen, we've been no contact right now, a good 5 to 7 years. But I'm married now for 24 years. She's tried to destroy my marriage since the minute I walked down the aisle. She ignored me on my wedding day. She tried to destroy my baby shower. She tried to destroy my bridal shower. She tried to poison my in-laws against me, who, by the way, love me very much, very, very dearly. But right now we're a little bit on the outs because she came back and she got involved with my older children and put a wedge between me and my son. And it was a little bit of a sticky situation, but my son is now back with me and my husband living with us. He was living with my mother, grandma, for a while, but I got my son back. But on the way, there was some collateral damage. People had got involved with my family, and my mother tried to convince my mother-in-law, who I was very close with, that I was an awful mother, and she tried to convince. And you know what? They fell for it. It was the biggest backstab in my life because I really thought that I had a mother-in-law that was on my side. But these narcissists, they just won't stop. I was wondering, Marnie, how many people either committed suicide or would think of trying to committing suicide in the presence of a narcissist? Because I could tell you, to be honest with you, and the people out there watching, I've thought about it many times when I was a youngster because I didn't see a way out. It's like I was growing up with a narcissist. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I would be punished if I didn't polish the silver. I would be punished if I didn't empty out the dishwasher. I would be punished if I did something that way. I was always being punished. I was always being sent to my room or getting a beating. And I'm like, there's either you run away, and I did. I ran away when I was a youngster. You either run away and you get kidnapped by somebody and killed, or you just end it. I think that's their goal. Their goal is to feel superior over someone and end it for them, maybe end their lives. Oh, you see, she killed herself. I told you she was crazy. Or you see, I told her she was a loose cannon. She packed up and left home and she didn't even bring her phone. Or I could just imagine what they say, but I know this is how my mother reacts. So when you're dealing with a narcissist, and I didn't realize this until I was much older, you really must stay even toned. You cannot argue with them. And I used to raise my voice. I used to throw things, and she used to sit there like an alley cat and say, "You see, she's nuts." And then my family members would say, "Valerie, why are you behaving that way? You're making her right." And it's like foiled again. You're like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a kid who was running away constantly, beginning at the age of 5, I was the
Yeah.
rebellious I was the rebellious, spoiled, ungrateful child. She was the victim of me. My brother was self-medicating. And lo and behold, he went to boarding school. When he went to boarding school, no drugs, great grades, captain of the swim team, his barrack. As soon as she pulled him out, right back into drugs, because either you're going to escape through unaliving yourself. And I had a lot of suicidal ideations as a young child. And looking backwards, there were times that I was in very high risk jumping off of things. And I think I was subconsciously really trying to not be on this earth anymore because I just couldn't cope. So I think the rate of children who have those ideations, who are attempting to do that, obviously self-harm in other ways, running away, doing drugs, all of these different things are symptoms of something that's going wrong, if not within the home directly, somewhere around there, because sometimes there are other situations at play. part of the importance of us talking about this, particularly with narcissistic family systems, is so that people start to look at, okay, look at these behaviors. What is causing these behaviors? Because the mother is not the victim of the child. The father is not the victim of the child. That isn't in keeping with what the power dynamic is. And we need to start to look at things more critically. You would think it would be common sense,
It's
but
not.
it's been going on for such a long time, and these people are such master manipulators
Oh,
of laying down the narrative at young ages for these children. So by the time they start to act out in these ways, their reputation was solidified when they were like 4 years old, right?
yes. And I just want to interject for 1 minute but she's your mother. I have to bring that up again because I married into a very a rich cultural family, and a family where stuff like this doesn't occur. They don't know what this stuff is. So for them to say, but it's your mother, was really a natural thing for them to say, because my mother-in-law, my husband being one of three, was so delicious and amazing to her children. And my sister-in-law, who's my age, we're born the same month, she was like my age, same like me. We grew up, same looking and same time frame, 70s, 80s. We have a lot of similarities. We were pretty close when we were younger because I met my husband when I was like 15. Um, when I got engaged to my husband and my mother-in-law started to get involved more in my life, because I always wanted a mom. I became very close with my mother-in-law, and it drove my mother insane. So my mother's main goal was to drive a wedge between me and my mother-in-law. So because I was so close to my mother-in-law, I confided in her, and I told my mother-in-law a lot of things that happened in my life. And I have to do it in her accent because it just wouldn't be the same. And she's got a very deep Israeli accent, and she's so cute. And she would say, "But I don't understand. Why would she do this? But this is your mother." And I would crack up hysterical. I would say, "Ima," I would say, "Mom, this is the truth. But I don't get it. Who would do this to their daughter? Who would throw their daughter out of the house at 10, 12, 15 years old? Who would tell their daughter, her future husband, that she had an abortion, whether she had one or not, just saying. Who would do any of these things to her daughter?" She told me something very interesting. A mother is supposed to cover their children, not uncover their children. And the narcissist is the NBA basketball Hall of Famer of uncovering their children and throwing them into the lion's den and making them look like they're the bad ones. It's unbelievable. I want to know what school these people are going to learn how to be such unbelievable cutthroats. And another thing I have to tell you, I noticed that narcissists, because now that I know what a narcissist is, they have very high-powered, interesting occupations. Most of them are doctors, lawyers, police officers, some kind of law enforcement, business owners, very high-powered, swank, sharks. That's what they are. They're like sharks, and they're out for blood, and they're out to get you. And yeah, if you're a child who grows up with a narcissist, you have a lot of reading to do, and you really need to listen to Marnie, and you need to learn how to deal with it, because they will drive you insane.
Yeah, and there's no fixing of those relationships, right? Because you're not dealing with someone who wants anything other than ultimate control. So
Correct.
in looking at that, like what led up to, I mean, other than your obvious childhood, but what
Yeah.
led up to the final straw, like the actual no contact itself? And
So
how long?
so that's a great question, because I think it probably will resonate with a lot of moms out there. So I was happily married to a lovely man, my husband, who I've known since I'm 15 years old, and already knew that my mother was cuckoo. Luckily I married my husband, because if I married any other guy, if he ever got a load of my mother, they probably would have took off of the hills. But anyway, so I'm going to get up to it now. So I'm married. I live in a beautiful home in a beautiful community. I have everything I've ever wanted. God was very good to me. I have two beautiful children at the time. I have three now, but the third one I had when I was 45. So I had two children at the time. I think my oldest was maybe 10, and my youngest one, I think he was 8. And I was no contact for a little bit, for a while, with my mother, because I think I had gotten a new chandelier, or probably a mink coat or something, and she saw it and she probably went berserk. Yeah, actually she came to my house one day and she looked up and she saw this beautiful chandelier, and she said to my husband, "Why did you buy that for her?" And my husband goes, I bought it for her because she deserves it, and I'll buy her anything else that she likes. And that just burned her up because he knows how to talk to her. So we had a huge argument. I threw her out of the house and we went no contact for a while. And during my 23, 24 years of marriage, we did like a no contact. It'll be like a year no contact, then she would come back. Then it would be 2 years no contact, then she'd come back until I learned my lesson of complete no contact. So the first no contact happened when the kids were those ages. And I remember the kids were at school. I get a knock at my door, and there's a tall man at the door with a badge with a lariat around. And I opened it. I'm like, "Can I help you?" I thought it was like voting registration or something. He's like, "Hi, my name is so and so. I'm here from Child Protective Services." And I went, "What's Child Protective Services?" I think I was like 34, 35 years old at the time. I was pretty young. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know what child CPS was. I said, "Well, why are you here? Is there a child lost?" He said, "No, I'm here to come into your house and check to see if you have food in the refrigerator, if the children have beds to sleep in, and if their hair is being pulled because we got a report that you're physically abusing your children." I went, "What? Oh my God, what?" I still didn't put two and two together that it was her until I called up a trusted friend and an ally who was an attorney, and I got some really good advice. Ended up finding out that it was her. She called up CPS on me because she had no control over me. Because when the narcissist has no control, they'll go to the furthest depths of the earth to do the craziest things to try and get that control over you. And her only way to get control over me, because I was so damn perfect, okay, I never did anything wrong to anybody, she could only call CPS. But she did it two times to me. So the first time was when she called CPS, and that's when I started to really go no contact. I had to because she wanted to take my children away.
Yeah. And, it's also not unusual for survivors to go no contact several times and to go back in. So tell me what that looked like for you when you would go no contact and how she would, make her way back in and what that process was like for you.
Okay, so from my experience, I don't know about anybody else, but a narcissist never says I'm sorry. They'll do everything else except utter those words, "I apologize." They'll send gifts, they'll send Easter baskets, they'll send Christmas presents or Hanukkah gifts and what, or they'll go through another vessel like a close girlfriend, and they'll put on a sob story. And I fell for it, but it's your mother. I fell for the "but it's your mother" BS for many, many years because I had young children. I was an only child. I didn't have a father, it was my mom was still single. She had nobody. She would cry the sob story to my in-laws. "I miss my grandchildren. She's keeping me from my grandchildren. They're going to grow up. They're not going to know who I am." Meanwhile, they know exactly who she is because she called CPS on them. But anyway, long story short, I ended up doing the rubber banding back and forth when they were little. And I felt pressure to do it because it's your mother. And also I fell for it that, well, maybe they should have a grandmother, even though she was extremely unhealthy. I wish I could plant my brain, the brain that I have now at 53 years old, to the 34, 35-year-old brain. I would have so much more clarity and I would have so much more control over my life. Because what you do is you fall for the sympathy and the whole schlob, the whole role that they put you through. And she would be back in our lives for like a month or two, and then she would start right in again. She would say something nasty, or she would try and get my husband to go against me, or she would try to get my children to go against me. And I'm like, this has to stop. This is like living with the enemy. I think there was a movie years ago with Julia Roberts or something. Living with the Jennifer Lopez, something like that. I was really living with the enemy. And it took a while for my husband to really see. He knew that she was crazy, but he at one point he said, "She's really nuts. She's really crazy." But it did ping pong back and forth many, many times until the last and final time, which was Mother's Day around 6 years ago, where she just made such a big balagan at a lunch that my mother-in-law had made for all of us, all the moms, me, my sister-in-law, her family from, her country where she's from. She made a big balagan. It was all about her because, again, narcissists have to make a big balagan on a special occasion. And she abused me in front of 30, 40 people. And I broke down and I cried. And my mother-in-law's pantry off her kitchen, I'll never forget it. And my sister-in-law came in there and she went, "Don't you cry. I seen it. I saw what she did to you. She humiliated you. That's it." She goes, "I want you to wipe your tears off your cheek, go in there and just finish off the day. And I did. But after that day, I never took her back.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I've been happy. But she did manage to weasel her way in last summer. But I nailed that one in the bud. I got her good. I got her real good.
So when you say that, and if you don't mind sharing, when you
Sure.
say that she humiliated you on the Mother's Day, can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about what happened? Because I'm sure that there's a lot of sibling survivors out there who have
I
this.
would love to hear it. Yes, absolutely. My mother-in-law made a beautiful brunch for Mother's Day. She had the table set for like 20, 30 people. She had family in from her country. And it was just so amazing. My mother-in-law's a fantastic cook. She had a beautiful house with a big, beautiful table with bouquet of flowers. And it was Mother's Day. Now I'm a mother too, right? I'm finally a mother. I remember texting my mother in the morning saying, I'll see you at, my mother-in-law's house. She didn't answer me. So I said, well, that's weird. And I said, Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I'll see you at mother-in-law's house in a little bit. She never answered me back. I said, okay, whatever. I didn't even think anything was going on. I'm so stupid. I should have known it was Mother's Day. It's a narcissist. She's going to ruin the day. We get all dolled up, me and the kids, and we go to my mother-in-law's house, and she was supposed to be there by 12:30. It's 1 o'clock already. My mother-in-law says, but where is she? She's got to come. We're ready to eat. We're having bagels and lox and everything. So I open up the door and I see that she's parking the car now and she's coming up and she has a sour puss on her face and a big bouquet of flowers and she's coming up the steps. And I see her coming up the steps. I go, Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Mom, why are you late? She totally blew right past me. But before she blew past me, she goes, That's how you say Happy Mother's Day to your mother. You text me, you don't call me. And I went, Okay. I was going to see you in a half an I didn't even have to explain myself at this point. She blew right past me, went right to one of my other sister-in-laws, my brother-in-law's wife, and she went, "Hi, everybody, I'm here!" Like Barbara Streisand walking in, like on her first or second concert. Like, who that? Hi, everybody! Oh, hi, Kimmy! How are you? Beep, bop, boop, boop. Everybody kissing her, and I'm standing at the front door with flowers that I had wanted to give to her, like an idiot. And everyone is looking at me and they're looking at her and my sister, my husband's sister caught it right away. I looked at her and I was going to say something. She said, "Don't bother saying anything. You already ruined my day." And she just sat at the head of the table. It wasn't even her table. She sat there and ignored me the entire time. The entire time. And even my little ones, they were like, "But mommy, why is grandma not talking to you?" And then my mother-in-law's friends and family who were from the other country, they go, well, what's going on here? Why aren't you talking? Why aren't you talking? And I had nothing to say. I could. She was ready to rock and roll at the brunch table. I wasn't. I just scurried off and I cried and I was completely humiliated. She
Wow.
ignored me the entire time. She also ignored me when I walked down the aisle for my wedding.